Welcome to the Messy Mary. I'm your host, Kirsten, from themessymary.org. Today's scripture comes from Colossians 3:2 in the NIV translation. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. This morning I was listening to a devotion about open hands. Boy, did it make me uncomfortable because I don't always have an open hand life with Jesus. I'm going to be honest about that. It made me ask myself, what am I holding back from Jesus? What haven't I fully surrendered to the Lord? I think sometimes as humans, it can be hard to let go of our control of things like our jobs, our homes, our kids, or other areas of our lives. Started thinking, if the Lord asked me for something that I hold dear, would I offer it to him willingly? Yikes. That made me stop in my tracks. I know what I should say and do, but honestly, I think there are a couple areas in my lives where I would struggle a bit in joyfully handing them over to Jesus. And yes, I know that everything is his, but guess what, folks? I'm still a work in progress. When I worked in full-time ministry at the Glennon House, I don't know that I would have said, here you go, Lord, take away this full-time ministry. It's yours. Because that ministry had become my identity. I now know that it was never mine to begin with, but it was hard to see that at that time. I once had a dream where one morning I took all my struggles into a tent that had an altar in the middle of it. I placed all my struggles on that altar, easily handing them over. I was opening my hands wide to surrender them to the Lord. But then, a couple hours later, there I saw myself sneaking across the sand like a little cartoon figure. You can hear the little music as they play and they sneak on tiptoe across the sand to that same tent. I snuck into that tent, walked up to that altar, and snatched all my troubles back. I went from open hand surrender to closed hand snatching in mere hours, all for a false sense of control. This is not a new story. This has been an issue for humans since the garden. Adam and Eve lived with open hands until the enemy convinced them that they could have more, that God was holding something back from them. Eve went from an open hand life to a hand that closed around that fruit that brought sin into our world. Ever since then, we have struggled with living with open hands before the Lord. When we're living here on earth, it's hard to not think about earthly things. When we watch the news, it's hard to not think about earthly things. When we get a paycheck that doesn't cover our bills, it's hard to not think about earthly things. When we have a sick child and we take them to the doctor and they don't know what to do to help, it's hard to not think about earthly things. But when we do what the scripture that I read earlier says to do, by setting our minds on things above, not on earthly things, there's a shift inside of us. When our mind is set on heavenly things, we begin to see our lives through a different lens. We begin to realize everything we have in this earthly life is the Lord's, not ours. We are simply stewards of those things and relationships that He has given us. Remembering this helps us to live an open hands life instead of clinging to the things around us. Today, let's thank Jesus that He will show us where our hands are closed, where we're not standing before Him with our hands wide open. Let's ask Him to help us to open our hands. This week's step of faith, let's take those things or relationships that Jesus showed us and do an exercise. Let's stand up. I mean, literally stand up right now with your hands closed tightly in fist, as tight as you can. Now, while you're opening your hands, inch by inch, release those things and relationships back to Jesus. Breathe out, offering the Lord whatever you were clinging onto, and thank Him for giving us hearts to live wide, open-handed lives. Until next time, with Jesus' help, let's be less messy and choose what's better. Have a blessed day.